Yeah, you got the right channel, all right. This is Tell Me About Your Book, yeah, the Halloween edition. Well, today's guest is someone called Gary Hill. He has written many books, so stay tuned.
Can you see me? Hello?
Hi, Gary. It's nice to have you
Hello.
on the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm feeling a little dead right now, but we'll continue anyway. I understand you've written a whole bunch of books, scary ones at that, my favorite. Why don't you tell me about it?
Well, I've done a lot through Tales of Wonder and Dread Publishing, which we do horror, which is what you'll like, and science fiction. And but it seems like we do a lot more horror than science fiction. Um, I've got two novellas that are horror that are my own, and then I've published a lot of collections of short stories and things, including some of my stuff and other people's stuff. Has some they have some public domain old stuff, and all very spooky. That's what it's all about, spooky.
I like spooky. I really like spooky. Why don't you pick one of them and tell me a little bit more about the details?
My latest novella is called It Ends in the Graveyard, and everything good ends in the graveyard, right?
Of course.
It was started with a writers group that I put together, and we came up with a challenge for everybody to come up with a short story that had certain criteria. Among those criteria, it had to be either horror or science fiction. There were certain characters you had to have. It had to have a forest in it, and it had to end in a cemetery at a funeral. And I got writing mine, and I really fell in love with the main character, and I just liked the story, so I expanded it out to novella edition and really or novella size and released it. It's sort of there's a monster that lives in this forest, and it's a very ancient monster, and it kills someone and attacks some other people, and they go out looking for it. And yeah, it's a fun little story, I think.
By novella, what exactly do you mean by that?
It's shorter than a novel, but longer than a short story.
So that makes it around, what, 150 pages or so?
Less than that. It's I think
Yes.
the book itself, even with other stuff also available from and that kind of stuff, I think it's around 100 pages long. So it's a nice short one, quick read.
Uh, I like quick reads. I generally don't have much time. Uh, so that's one of your books. How many have you written then?
I've got just one other horror novella, which is this. It's a little bit longer one. It's called The Homestead, and it's about some criminals who there's a house that sits on a hill, and it used to be it's a mansion, and it's a massive mansion with a huge underground area, and it used to be in the center of like the best part of town. But as time has gone by, it sort of the area around it degenerated, and it's sort of a crime-ridden area. And these guys decide that they're going to do a huge heist on the place, and so they actually drive a semi up onto the grounds after they've shut off the entire security system. They're going to empty this place out, but unfortunately for them, it doesn't go as planned, and things start happening. The doors start trapping them in. Lights go off. They can't find the people who live there, and by the end, they're just trying to get back out, and not doing so well at that. They're in serious danger. So that's the other novella. But I've got a lot of these compilation things. Some of them have fiction stuff, some nonfiction stories. I do a lot of local area. There's two Spooky Berwin and Spooky Berwin Two, which you've got to someone like you has to be familiar with Sven Gulli. He's on New
Yes.
TV, and they're named Spooky Berwin as an homage to Sven Gulli because I'm a huge fan, and they're basically stories set around the Chicago area. But I called it Spooky Berwin since that's the Chicago area, and since I love Sven Gulli.
Right. Spangoli. Oh, one of my favorites. Oh, one of my favorites. I can't get enough of that. Now, you mentioned compilations. That means you write with other people as well?
Yes, most of these have they have contributions from other people, and also when it comes time to print the book, if it's not filled out enough, I'll go get some public domain works from people like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Algernon Blackwood, those kinds of things. You know, the classics.
Yes, and so then what exactly you do? You say some of your books include nonfiction.
Yes.
It's pretty scary
Um,
stuff. How does that work?
First, like the Spooky Berwin books are both that way. They're mostly nonfiction, which I cover some of the creepy stories around the area, and get as much. I do a lot of research on them, and not only me, but some of the other people do some of the nonfiction things. And I do the research. If I can get someone out to take some pictures, I do that. If it's close enough and I have the time, I get out and take some photos of the area. And then we add the fiction pieces at the end usually, but and the fiction pieces all have to be centered around that area too.
Right, right. Sounds like you're a very busy person trying to scare everybody. I like that.
Well, scaring people's full-time job.
Is
You
it?
know that.
Is it? Oh, so this is something you do all the time?
Sure, it's spooky season year round. So
It is. Now, how are sales doing for your books and all the contributions and all the things that you do? Are you making some money?
some of them do really well, and some of them not so well. But you know what? Here's the thing I do. When it comes down to it, I put out books that I want on my bookshelf. And if they sell, that's a bonus for me. If they don't, I've got them on my bookshelf anyway. I figure you've got to do it for the art, um, first and foremost. And then if you get the sales, it's just a bonus on that.
Bonus. Yes, I agree with you. Doing it for the art is primary. Do you have a means to make a living other than writing these books?
Oh yeah, I do some freelance writing here and there, and but I do all my different projects and add it all up together, and keeps me busy, but it keeps money coming in, so that's
Oh,
good.
I see. You're one of the fortunate ones. You're doing things you like to do and get away with it.
There you go.
Now, how long have you been writing these kind of stories?
The spooky stuff. Well, you know what? I've actually been writing spooky stories for probably most of my life, um, but only putting them out for I don't know, maybe about 6 years, something like that. Although I had a few things published before in different magazines and things, but as far as publishing myself, the first collection I did was Dark Dreams and Weird Worlds that had some of that stuff in it, which came out in 2017. And that was sort of when that took off because I had advertised for people to put together a science fiction horror collection. And we got enough stories in, put together a good book, and put it out. And that gave me the inspiration for starting Tales of Wonder and Dread Publishing. I thought I can do more of these things. And that started in 2018.
So, do you do your own editing?
Yes, I do the editing. I do the book layouts. Although I will say for public domain stories, I pretty much don't edit them. My thought is they're way older than I am. They've been out there in this form for that long. Who am I to change that? But all the other stuff, I do the editing and I do the book formatting, interior book formatting. I do a lot of the covers, but I have some of the covers were done by other people.
Do you have anything on the burner right now?
Not too much. I've got one cut getting ready to come out, and that's a collection of vintage stories called "Put the Spooky Back into Christmas." A lot of Christmas horror stuff. Which last year I did "Horrifying Holidays," which had some new stuff, a couple stories from me, some other things, quite a few nonfiction, and then a few classics. We actually included "A Christmas Carol" by Charles Dickens in there because it's got ghosts in it. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, that
Oh, very scary.
the scene where the ghost of Christmas Future takes him to the grave and just shows him the grave, points at it. I think that's a chilling scene.
Oh, it's very, very scary. Christmas is
And you
very
know what?
scary.
Most people haven't really read the Dickens story. I think they've seen the movies. I used to go see plays. I hadn't read the Dickens story until I got it ready for publication. So I thought it was cool to include that. But this year I'm doing just strictly vintage stuff, and it's put the spooky back into Christmas.
Wonderful.
That'll come out on November 1st.
Oh, looking forward to that. Right after Halloween, All Saints Day, November 1st. That's right. I think it's where all the saints die or something.
Oh, hey,
I
works
think
for
so.
me.
That's what it's a little cool where I am right now, but I like it that way. Yeah, what else can I ask you? You know this is a show called Tell Me About Your Book, and you've been telling me about a couple of different books. So tell me something else about perhaps you say you wrote an article. You were a published article, and what was that all about?
I've written for a couple local websites. I write for my own music website, and I started doing the nonfiction spooky stuff for a website locally here called beatcafe.com. And I did one called Haunted Rockford, which is the town it's based in, Rockford, Illinois. And that was sort of the first spooky nonfiction thing I did. And I sort of fell in love with the idea for that. And all those stories that I did for Beat Cafe have been put together in a book since then. And I've gone back and sort of rewritten some of those for some of my collections too.
I see. I see. That's a very interesting kind of life that you live. I see you got your display there. What is all that I'm looking at?
Oh, I've got I collect horror based cereal boxes. I collect all kinds of weird things and whatever catches my eye. And I've got those, and you can see some other Halloween type stuff back there. And also I've got the cover to my very first book on the wall, Strange Sound of Cthulhu, which is nonfiction book about music that was inspired by the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, which that came out in 2006. And I'm actually working on an updated version to be released on the 20th anniversary, updated and revised and expanded version. Oh, and vampires. You like
I
vampires?
love vampires.
So I'm doing an interesting little thing with vampires. I've been writing vampire stories for years. And I put out two collections of vampire stories, Lifeblood and Lifeblood 2, which have some of my stories and other people's stories in them. My stories all exist in one universe. There are certain rules, there's certain existing characters that keep recurring, and certain plots that keep going. And interestingly enough, I include some historical things in there. For instance, there's a story I did called Chasing the Dragon that is basically uh, when Vlad Tepes led the Impaler, gets turned into a vampire, and it's all leading up to that. And then there's a later one called Dragon's End, in which case he gets killed. But I also, there's one where there's when the Titanic sinks, there's actually a vampire on it in my storyline, and so I'm taking all these stories that I've already written in various places and going to assemble them with some new character stories and do it as Bible of Blood, which is it's going to sort of tell one long tale because they all do fit together, even though they're different voices, different styles. And it's going to sort of tell one long story of all these vampires in this universe.
Vampires in the universe. I like the fact that you're using these historical events like the Titanic. I didn't know there were spooky things going on there, but I guess you're clued into it.
Oh, I put it in
Put
there.
it in there. It's a much better story. It's a much better story.
Well, like he said, like the main character says in that story, uh, no evidence would ever remain of what had happened because it all went down.
That's right. It did. In a big way.
I actually I had him get on the boat that took the Carpathia, which was one of the boats that was a rescue ship. He came to New York on the Carpathia. I had the timeline down. I mean, I did my research for that one, and he remarked how he had grown up around and lived around the Carpathian Mountains, so it seemed appropriate for him to come to New York on the Carpathia.
Well, sure, sure. The Carpathian Mountains. That's near where Vlad lived. Vlad the Impaler.
Exactly,
That's right.
Transylvania.
Wonderful territory. I love it. Well, Gary, you are a very interesting guest.
Well, thank you, sir.
And you're very spooky, scary.
I try for it.
Your hat scares me. Oh, I wish I had a hat like that, though.
I'd been wanting one of these for a while. I just got it.
That's wonderful. Well, Gary, I really like talking to you because I like spooky things. And this has been so much fun for me. Well, if you have anything else to say about another book, I'm all ears.
Let me think. You like Lovecraft? You like H.P. Lovecraft?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got Lovecraftian Branches, which is an interesting little book I did a combination of one's Lovecraftian Roots and one is Lovecraftian Branches, and they were released at the same time. Lovecraftian Roots is a collection of public domain stories that influenced H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraftian Branches has a number of Lovecraft stories itself, and then some newer stories written on the Lovecraft mythos, including two of mine, and we've got some from other people too. Willem Pugmire, who was was a very well known Lovecraftian writer, contributed one of his stories before he passed away. And so part of the proceeds from those two books goes to his estate to help with his final expenses and things like that. And both books are dedicated to him. Although I'm planning a second Lovecraftian Branches to do some newer Lovecraftian stories and things. And like I said, we've got a lot of these Spooky Rockford too. Those are all about Rockford, Illinois. They have nonfiction spooky things and fiction. And there's a Spooky State Line, which just came out, which is sort of Spooky Rockford 3, except that the area is a lot more expanded. It goes into Wisconsin and things like that. Trying to think, I've done one, Faith Mayor, which is all about religious horror. And we just came out with Horrifying Halloween, which are all stories focused on Halloween. And again, there's some poetry in that one, but again, those are all, some are there's one nonfiction piece I did of just some horrifying things that happened around Halloween. And then the rest are all fiction, two stories of mine and some other stories from other people. And like I said, a few poems.
You mentioned Illinois and Wisconsin. I've been to both those places quite a few times when I was alive. Anyway, I didn't notice anything spooky. I mean, are there like haunted houses there I don't know about?
Oh, there are a lot of places that are spooky. And in fact, Illinois, I've written quite a bit about it. There's just outside of Chicago, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is considered one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States. I've written quite a bit about it. I've got a calendar out about it with photographs that I took there, and I've been there. I love the place. But supposedly, I mean, the history of it started as a cemetery, and when that was sort of the main thoroughfare there, but then a highway was built nearby, and the main road just sort of fell into disuse. And now it's nothing but a trail that you walk through the forest preserve to get to the cemetery. And there's a it's a pretty big pond right next to the cemetery. There are rumors that Al Capone and some of the other gangsters dumped bodies in the pond, but nobody's ever found evidence to prove it's true. But they have the cemetery in the 70s reportedly became a place where Satanists would come and do rituals and things, and the tombstones were disturbed. It was pretty well vandalized, And in recent times, they've started rebuilding it. They've got a restoration project. But a lot of people say that's why it's supposed to be haunted. There are stories about a house off to the distance, off to the side of the path to get there that isn't really there and just shows up once in a while and leaves. Stories of hooded monks. You'd like the hooded monks. Uh, and stories of orbs going around. There's a photograph called, if you look it up, it's the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. Someone took this photograph with infrared film, and there's a lady sitting on a tombstone. Now, I don't know. To me, it looks like a double exposure, but they claim it's not. But there are a lot of stories about this cemetery. I didn't really experience anything when I went there, except there was one tombstone. Now, some of the lights that have supposedly been seen there are red and blue. And one of the tombstones I took pictures of has a red and blue circle on it, which looks like it's spray painted on there. The only thing is, my friend I went with and I both looked at that tombstone. And we don't remember there being any painted circles on it. So I don't know.
Well, I can tell you from where I'm at, on the other side, it does exist. Oh, it really does.
Chicago area's got lots of supposedly haunted places. Rockford, Illinois, where I did am based from around basically, and did the two spooky Rockford books. There are several places. There's a theater called the Coronado Theater. I had some experiences there myself that I wrote about. It's supposed to be pretty haunted. There's a place called Tinker Swiss Cottage, which I've covered and gone through. And, haunted or not, it's just this beautiful place that was built in the late 18 or mid 1800s. And it's just a really exceptional place. It's a museum now. So there are quite a few places in the area.
You know, Gary, today is Halloween. What are your plans for today?
Yes.
What are you going to do?
I don't know. We'll probably sit and watch some spooky movies and enjoy ourselves. What else is Halloween about? I mean, I'm all about the spooky movies. I do reviews of spooky movies on Spooky Ventures, and for me, spooky movies are year round. But
Oh, it's very
it's
good.
interesting because I call us the Spooky Tribe, and for us, spooky is year round. But for the rest of the world, it's just in a certain period of time, and it's kind of cool when everybody's on the same page with us.
I just like to scare people. On Halloween,
There you go.
tonight, oh, I'm going to scare so many people.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I do. Gary, it's been just so much fun hearing about your books. Yeah, so I guess this may be the end of our
The
conversation.
end.
Oh, I look forward to reading some of your work.
Oh, anytime, my friend, anytime.
All right. It's been ghoulish.
That's what we go for, ghoulish and spooky.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's it, my friends. That's it. It's all over now. Yeah. And if you like what I do here on this channel, tell me about your book, well, hit that like button, subscribe, and unless you ring the bell, I will make sure to make your life a living nightmare. Now, if you happen to be a self-published author, why don't you dare to contact me? And I'll tell you a few things that you don't want to know. Until such time as that, I want you to keep writing and try your best to be nice to everybody.